home 2 days early from a business trip. Your house looks normal. Your driveway looks normal, except for one thing. Your best friend's Tesla is parked in your spot. You've known this man since you were 19 years old. You built a company together from nothing, from a $400 laptop on a dorm room floor. You were the best man at his wedding. You cried at his mother's funeral. And right now, at 2:47 in the afternoon, while you're standing in your own driveway with a carry-on bag in your hand, you hear your wife laughing inside your house. Her laugh that she told you was only for you. My name is Marcus Cole. I'm 33 years old. I was a cybersecurity consultant who knew how to track every digital footprint a person leaves online. I thought that skill made me untouchable. I was wrong. Because the people who were destroying my life weren't strangers. They were the two people I trusted most in the world. And before this story is over, I want you to understand one thing. The most dangerous enemy you will ever face is the one who still has the key to your house. Stay with me, because what I found in the next 72 hours will change the way you look at everyone around you. Let me take you back to the beginning, because context is everything. You need to understand what I had before you can understand what they took. I met Ryan Calloway at the University of Michigan in 2009. First week of freshman year. We were assigned to the same dorm floor, Bursley Hall, 3rd floor, room 312. He knocked on my door at 11 p.m., holding a bag of chips and asking if I wanted to watch the game. I didn't even like football, but something about the guy made me say yes. By sophomore year, we were inseparable. By junior year, we had an idea. I was studying computer science. Ryan was studying business. I could build the product, he could sell it. That was the foundation of Vaultline Security, a cybersecurity firm that specialized in protecting small and mid-sized businesses from data breaches. We launched it out of my apartment in 2014 with $17,000 between us and a handshake. No lawyers, no contracts, just two best friends and a dream. That was my first mistake. By 2021, Vaultline had 43 employees, $6 million in annual revenue, and contracts with hospitals, law firms, and a regional bank chain in the Midwest. I was the technical brain. Ryan was the face. I also had Lauren. I married Lauren Prescott in 2019. She was an accountant, smart, organized, beautiful. She had this laugh that could fill an entire room. When things were good, we were great. When things were bad, I told myself we were still great. That was my second mistake. The morning of that Tuesday, I was supposed to be in Austin, Texas for a 3-day client meeting, but the meeting got cut short. The client canceled the second and third day. Bad timing on their end. They said, I booked the first flight home. I didn't call Lauren. I was going to surprise her. Maybe take her to dinner at that Italian place she loved on Michigan Avenue. I landed at O'Hare at 4:15 p.m., took an Uber home, and that's when I saw Ryan's Tesla in my driveway. Now, I want to be honest with you. My first reaction wasn't suspicion. It was confusion. Ryan knew I was in Austin. Why was he at my house on a Tuesday afternoon when he should have been at the office? I walked to the front door. I put my key in the lock. And that's when I heard her laugh. I could have walked inside and confronted them right then, but something stopped me. Call it instinct. Call it 14 years of training and threat assessment. Something whispered to me, don't show your hand. Not yet. I stood on my own front porch for 60 seconds. I took a breath. I picked up my bag and I walked back to the Uber that was still at the curb. I told the driver I forgot something. I had him take me to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. I sat down, I ordered a black coffee, and I started thinking like an investigator instead of a husband. The first thing I did was pull up the home security system on my phone. We had a Nest camera set up. Front door, back door, garage, living room, kitchen. Lauren knew about all of them. So did Ryan. But what they didn't know was that I had added a 5th camera 6 months earlier. A small pinhole lens mounted inside the bookshelf in the home office. I had installed it because I suspected someone had been in my home office. Files had been moved, not dramatically, just slightly. The way a careful person moves things when they're looking for something. I opened the office camera feed and scrolled back to 12:30 p.m. The footage was clear, high definition, and what I saw made the coffee in my hand go cold. Ryan Calloway was sitting at my desk, my personal desk in my home office. He wasn't there for a social visit. He had my laptop open. He was typing. Fast, purposeful. Lauren walked in behind him. She set down 2 glasses of water. She leaned over his shoulder. She pointed at something on the screen and said something I couldn't hear. Then she laughed. That laugh, my hands were shaking, but I kept watching. Ryan pulled a USB drive out of his jacket pocket and plugged it into my laptop. I watched him copy files. I watched my wife stand there and let him. I closed the app. I set the phone face down on the table. I stared at the coffee cup for a long time. In my industry, there's a term we use: insider threat. It means the most dangerous security breach doesn't come from outside. It comes from someone who already has access. I had spent a decade protecting companies from insider threats, and I had never once looked inside my own home. I picked up the phone again. I opened a different app, not the camera feed. Something else. 18 months earlier, I had installed a background data monitoring program on our home network. It was standard practice for me. I used it to track unusual data transfer activity. Mostly I set it up to protect us. I had never actually checked it. Until now, what it showed me was worse than the cameras. The monitoring program showed me 14 months of data, every device that connected to our home network, every file that was transferred, every login attempt, every outbound data packet. Ryan's phone had connected to our home network 47 times in the last 14 months. Twice a week, almost like a schedule. Every time I was traveling. But that wasn't what stopped my heart. What stopped my heart was the file names. Vaultline Client Master List 2022-XX, Vaultline Contract Templates, Confidential PDF, Marcus Personal Banking, Credistos Text Vaultline Source Code Brecope v4.zip, my source code, my client list, my banking credentials, all copied, all transferred to an external server whose IP address I did not recognize. I ran a quick trace on the IP. It took me 4 minutes. The server was registered to a company called Apex Digital Solutions, LLC. Registered in Delaware. Incorporated 8 months ago. I had never heard of Apex Digital Solutions. I pulled the Delaware Business Registry. It's public record. Anyone can look it up. The registered agent was a law firm in Wilmington, but the listed director, the person who actually owned this company, Ryan Michael Calloway. My business partner had built a competing company using my own source code, my client list, and my security protocols. He had been preparing to steal everything. Vaultline was built on and launch it under a new name, and he had been using my wife as his inside access. I paid the coffee shop bill in cash. I walked to the car rental place across the street. I rented a gray Civic, nothing memorable, nothing traceable, and then I drove home. But I didn't pull into the driveway. I parked on the street, 2 houses down, behind a white van. Because I needed to see something with my own eyes, not on a screen, in real life. 20 minutes later, Ryan walked out of my front door. He was carrying a laptop bag. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like a man leaving his own house. Lauren stood in the doorway watching him go. She was wearing a white sweater I had given her for her birthday. She had her arms crossed. She looked happy. She looked the way she used to look at me. Ryan got into the Tesla. He drove away. Lauren went back inside. I sat in that rental car for 6 minutes without moving. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I was not going to confront them. I was going to build a case so airtight that when I was done, there would be no lawyers who could save them, no excuses that would hold up, and no version of their story where they walked away clean. But I had no idea what I was about to find next. I checked into a hotel that night under a fake name. Old habit from my corporate espionage days. I had a clean credit card linked to an LLC I used for sensitive client work. Completely legal, just private. I sat at the hotel desk with 3 laptops, 2 burner phones, and every piece of digital evidence I had pulled in the last 4 hours. The more I dug, the darker it got. I pulled Vaultline's financial records from our accounting software. As co-founder, I had full access to the back end. I started running forensic comparisons, something I hadn't done in over a year because I trusted Ryan to handle the business side. I found the first anomaly in a line item labeled Vendor Consultation Fees. Over 18 months, Ryan had paid out $1.2 million to 3 different vendors. All 3 vendors were shell companies. All 3 were registered in states with weak disclosure laws. And all 3 had bank accounts tied back, through 3 layers of transfers, to Ryan Calloway personally. He wasn't just stealing clients, he was laundering company money through fake vendors and funneling it into his own accounts. $1.2 million. But here's where the story shifts, because when I traced the final layer of those transfers, I expected to find Ryan's personal account at Chase Bank. Instead, I found something I couldn't explain. The final destination wasn't Ryan's account. It was a joint account held by Ryan Calloway and Lauren Elizabeth Cole, my wife's full legal name. They had a joint account together, one I never knew about, opened 22 months ago, 3 months before he started the transfers. I sat back in my chair. I closed my eyes. I tried to construct an innocent explanation. I couldn't find one. This wasn't Ryan manipulating Lauren. This wasn't Lauren being used without her knowledge. This was a partnership. A deliberate, coordinated, long-term financial conspiracy. And the account had a balance of $847,000. Let me pause right there. Because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, just call the police, just call a lawyer. I hear you. But here's the problem. On paper, half of Vaultline belonged to Ryan. He had signatures on everything. If I walked into a police station tomorrow and said my business partner was stealing from our company, the first thing his lawyer would say is, prove it wasn't authorized. Prove it wasn't a loan. Prove it wasn't a bonus. Prove it wasn't a business decision you approved. Without the right evidence presented in the right way, they walk. I had spent my career watching criminals walk on technicalities. That was not going to happen here. I worked through the night. By 4 a.m., I had mapped every transaction, every transfer, every communication I could access. I had a 20-page document that would have made a federal prosecutor smile. But there was one thing still nagging at me. Apex Digital Solutions, Ryan's new company, had already signed 2 clients. I recognized both names from our Vaultline prospect list. Companies we had been pitching for months. How did Ryan close them so fast? Poaching our prospects takes more than a pitch deck. You need insider knowledge, pricing, pain points. The exact words the decision maker used when they described their problem. Ryan had that information, but Ryan wasn't technical enough to use it alone. He needed someone who understood the product. I started cross-referencing Ryan's emails. I had access to the company email server, looking for communication with those 2 clients. The emails existed. They were clean, professional, technically flawless. But Ryan didn't write them. The technical language was wrong for him. He always oversimplified. These emails were precise. I ran a writing pattern analysis. It took an hour. The writing profile matched one person in our company, Derek Haynes, our lead engineer. My guy, the man I had hired, trained, mentored, and given equity to 3 years ago. Derek had been working for Ryan behind my back. He was the technical brain for Apex Digital. He was the one who made the stolen source code functional. He was the one who knew exactly what to say to close those clients. I sat with that for a long moment. Derek had been in my office last month. He had shaken my hand. He had looked me in the eye and told me Vaultline was the best job he'd ever had. 3 betrayals. My business partner, my wife, my lead engineer, the people closest to me, the people who knew the most about me. I want to tell you something right now, because I know there are people watching this who are in the middle of something similar. Whether it's a business partner who's taking advantage, a friend who's been lying to your face, or someone in your own home who is not who you thought they were. The pain of betrayal is not just emotional, it's physical. There's a moment where your chest feels hollow, where your hands go cold, where your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are showing you. I had that moment at 4:30 a.m. in a hotel room in Chicago. And then I got up, I washed my face, and I went back to work. Because grief is a luxury I couldn't afford yet, not until they paid for what they did. The next morning, I called the one person I knew I could trust, my college roommate's older brother, Aaron Merritt, 39 years old, 14 years as a federal prosecutor before going private. The kind of attorney who didn't just win cases, he engineered them. I had stayed in touch with Aaron over the years. I had referred several corporate clients to him. He owed me a favor that he always said he'd never be able to repay. It was time to collect. He answered on the second ring. I told him I needed a meeting, urgent, private. Today, he cleared his schedule. I walked into his downtown office at 10 a.m. with a printed copy of my 20-page report, 2 USB drives of digital evidence, and a screenshot of the joint account. Aaron read for 45 minutes without saying a word. When he finished, he set the papers down, leaned back, and said, "Marcus, this isn't just civil fraud. This is wire fraud, theft of trade secrets, and money laundering. Federal violations. You don't need a divorce attorney. You need the FBI. The FBI, I had thought about that, but the FBI takes time. Investigations take months. In that time, Ryan could transfer the money, close the accounts, delete the evidence, Relocate, I told Aaron, not yet. I need them to feel safe. I need them to keep going. I need them to complete the crime, not just attempt it. Aaron looked at me for a long time, then he nodded slowly. You want to let the trap close around them, he said. Exactly, I said. Aaron told me something at the end of that meeting that I almost missed because my mind was running 15 steps ahead. He said, Marcus, there's one more thing you should know. Before you came to me this morning, someone called my office asking about you. I stopped. Who? He turned his monitor toward me. On the screen was a phone message from his receptionist, time-stamped 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before I arrived. The caller had asked whether Marcus Cole was a client of the firm. They left no name. But Aaron's receptionist had noted the caller ID. It was a law firm in downtown Chicago, Ryan's law firm. He already had lawyers working on something, and they were already asking questions about me. The hunt was going in both directions. I drove back to the hotel and spent 3 hours thinking through every angle. Ryan was building a legal strategy. That meant he knew or suspected that I knew something. Maybe Lauren had noticed I hadn't come home. Maybe he had received an alert from Vaultline's system when I accessed the financial records. I had been careful, but careful and invisible are not the same thing. I had to move fast, but I also had to stay in control. The plan I developed had 4 stages. Stage 1, go home, act normal. Give them nothing. Stage 2, create a financial tripwire, a document that would force them to act and show their hand completely. Stage 3, let Aaron coordinate with the FBI White-Collar Crime Division as a private attorney referral. No subpoenas yet, just a quiet briefing. Stage 4, watch them walk into the trap. I drove home that afternoon. Lauren was in the kitchen when I walked in. She looked up and her face did something complicated. You're home early, she said. Meeting got canceled, I told her. Thought I'd surprise you. The pause before she smiled was about half a second too long. I had spent a decade measuring human reaction time in security threat assessments. Half a second is a lifetime. That's great, she said. I'll make dinner. I put my bag down. I sat on the couch. I turned on a basketball game and stared at the screen without seeing it. 2 can play at this game, I thought. That night, after Lauren was asleep, I did something that required every nerve I had. I got out of bed. I went to the home office. I sat at my desk. And I drafted a document on official Vaultline letterhead. The document stated that I intended to buy out Ryan's 50% ownership of the company for $4 million, a fair market valuation. It stated that the transaction would be completed within 30 days and that all financials would undergo a full independent audit as part of the process. An audit. That word was the loaded gun in the sentence. If Ryan had nothing to hide, an audit was no problem. But Ryan had $1.2 million of fraudulent vendor payments hidden in those books. An audit would find every single one of them. I was dangling the money in front of him, $4 million, free and clear. But to get it, he had to walk through a room full of traps. I sent the document to his work email at 11:47 p.m. Then I went back to bed. And for the first time in 48 hours, I slept. I slept because I knew that somewhere across the city, Ryan Calloway's phone was buzzing, and he was reading a document that was going to make him very, very nervous. Nervous people make mistakes, and I was going to be watching every single one. The call came at 6:52 the next morning. Ryan. Cheerful. Almost too cheerful. Hey man, I got your email. $4 million is generous. I'm actually open to it. Let's grab lunch and talk about it. He was performing. The warmth in his voice was manufactured. I could hear the gears grinding behind it. 14 years of friendship means you know the difference between a man who is happy and a man who is pretending to be happy. Sure, I said. Thursday, 12:30. Alberto's. Perfect, he said. We hung up. I immediately called Aaron. He took the bait. Thursday lunch. Aaron said, good, but Marcus, I need you to do a financial check right now, today. Something in his voice made me go cold. Why? Because I did some more digging last night on my end. The joint account you found. I ran the account number through a contact at the bank. As of this morning, the balance has changed, $847,000. How much is left? I asked. Silence on Aaron's end. Aaron, how much is left? $43,000, he said quietly. They moved it last night. Wire transfer at 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes after you sent the buyout email. I stood in my kitchen while Lauren made coffee 10 feet away from me, and I processed what Aaron had just told me. $800,000, moved in 5 minutes. Lauren had been awake at 11:52 p.m. I thought she was asleep. She hadn't been asleep. She had been on her phone. I looked at her back. She was stirring her coffee, humming something under her breath. She had no idea I knew. "Where did it go?" I asked Aaron quietly, walking toward the back porch and closing the door. "Cayman Islands," Aaron said. "Shell account. That's where it gets hard. Offshore recovery is slow. We need the FBI involved now, Marcus. We can't wait until Thursday." I looked through the glass door at Lauren. She picked up her mug. She took a sip. She opened her phone. "Okay," I said. "Call them," and just like that, the timeline accelerated. What I thought would be a slow, controlled takedown was now a race against the clock. The money was offshore. The clock was ticking. And I had a lunch meeting Thursday with a man who was about to realize his exit route had a wall across it. I want to tell you something about working with the FBI. People have this idea that the moment you call them, they kick in doors and arrest everyone in sight. That's not how the white-collar division works. They are patient, methodical. They think like chess players. Special Agent Diana Reyes met me and Aaron at Aaron's office on Wednesday morning. She was 40 years old, calm, precise, and she had been running financial crimes investigations for 12 years. She read my file in 30 minutes. When she looked up, she said, "Mr. Cole, I've seen 100 cases like this. What makes yours winnable is the digital trail you documented yourself. Most victims don't have your background. You did our job for us." She outlined the federal violations: wire fraud, 18 months in minimum, up to 20 years. Theft of trade secrets, additional 10 years. Money laundering, another 20. And the offshore transfer last night had added international wire fraud to the stack. "We want the Thursday lunch," Agent Reyes said. "We want him talking. We want him saying on tape what his plan is. That seals the case. Anything less is a plea deal down to 2 years. 2 years for destroying everything I built. 2 years for what he did to my marriage, what he did to my company, what he did to my life. Wire me," I said. Aaron put his hand on my arm. "Marcus, think about this. If he suspects." "He won't," I said. "We've had lunch 100 times. He thinks I'm the mark. He thinks I'm emotional and desperate. He's been underestimating me this whole time. That's exactly why this works." Agent Reyes agreed. She said, "We'll have a team in position at Alberto's. 4 plainclothes agents. 1 at the bar, 2 at tables near you, 1 outside. The moment he makes any explicit admission, you touch your right ear. That's the signal. Simple, clean. I had done surveillance work for clients before. I understood the mechanics, but what Agent Reyes said next was the part I wasn't prepared for. "Mr. Cole," she said carefully, "I have to ask you about your wife." I looked at her. Lauren Cole was a named account holder on the offshore transfer. That makes her a co-conspirator in the federal charge. When we move on Callaway, we will also need to move on her. Are you prepared for that? The room was quiet. I had been so focused on Ryan, on the strategy, on the trap, on the technical pieces, that I had managed to keep that one question at the back of my mind, locked in a room I wasn't ready to enter. Was I prepared to watch my wife be arrested? I thought about her laugh, the one I fell in love with. Then I thought about her standing in the office doorway watching Ryan copy my files, and I thought about her being awake at 11:52 p.m., moving $800,000 out of the country. "Yes," I said. "I'm prepared. I wasn't. But sometimes you say the thing you need to be true before it becomes true." Thursday arrived like a sentence. I got dressed in a navy sport coat. I put the wire in place. I checked it twice. I drove to Alberto's and parked 2 blocks away. I sat in the car for 4 minutes. I said one thing out loud, to nobody. I said, "This is for everything we built." Then I walked in. Ryan was already there. Corner table. He stood up when I came in and gave me a hug like we were old friends catching up. Which I supposed was true. Technically, we were old friends. We just weren't friends anymore. I sat down. We ordered. He started with small talk: the Bulls, a conference coming up, a client dinner he had been at last week. 14 years of conversation between us, and now every word felt like a chess move. After 20 minutes, I steered it toward business. "So," I said, "the buyout, you seemed pretty open to it on the phone. $4 million, that fair to you?" Ryan took a sip of his water. He nodded slowly. He leaned forward. "Here's the thing, Marcus. The number is right, but the audit piece, that's a problem for me." "Why?" I said. "Standard process on any acquisition. I know, he said, but there are some vendor arrangements I've set up that might look unusual to someone who doesn't understand the context. I need to be able to clean those up before any external review. Clean them up. There it was. What kind of arrangements? I said, keeping my voice neutral. And then Ryan did something I didn't expect. He dropped the act. Not completely, but enough. He looked at me with a different expression. Not the rehearsed warmth of the past 20 minutes. Something harder. Something almost relieved. Marcus, he said quietly, how much do you actually know? My hand stayed on the table. My face didn't change. I know enough, I said. Ryan leaned back. He exhaled slowly. He looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he looked back at me. Here's what I think happens, he said. I think you found something. Maybe the vendor payments, maybe the Apex registration. But without me, you don't have a company. I have the clients. I have the relationships. And the way your contracts are written, I checked with my lawyers, your non-compete has a gap in it. If I walk, I take everything with me, legally. He wasn't wrong about the contract gap. I had discovered it 3 months ago and had been meaning to fix it. And here's what I also think, Ryan continued, lowering his voice. You walk into a courtroom, you're going to have to explain why your wife's signature is on the same accounts as mine. You sure you want that conversation in front of a judge? He was threatening me, using Lauren as a shield, using the one thing he thought I couldn't be rational about. I looked at my old friend across the table. I touched my right ear. What happened in the next 45 seconds is something I've replayed in my mind hundreds of times. Ryan was still talking, laying out his terms, explaining calmly how this was going to go, how I was going to drop the audit condition and accept a revised deal that buried his theft, how my wife's involvement gave him leverage over me. He was completely in control, right up until he wasn't. The man at the bar stood up. The couple at the table 2 rows over put down their menus. The door opened and 2 more agents came through. Ryan stopped mid-sentence. He looked around. He looked at me. Marcus, Ryan Calloway. Agent Reyes's voice cut across the restaurant. She was behind him before he could stand. FBI, you're under arrest for wire fraud, theft of trade secrets, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Please stand up slowly and keep your hands where I can see them. The restaurant went completely silent. Ryan stood up. His face was ash gray. He looked at me with an expression I don't have a word for. It was somewhere between rage and grief. Like he had forgotten, somewhere in the middle of all his scheming, that I was a real person. That there would be real consequences. You wired yourself, he said, not accusatory, almost like he was impressed despite himself. You taught me everything I know about risk management, I said. You always said, document everything. They walked him out past the other diners. At the same time, 3 miles away, 2 more agents were at my front door. Lauren was arrested in our kitchen. I know because Agent Reyes called me while I was still sitting at the table with an untouched plate of pasta in front of me. We have her, Reyes said. She's cooperating. I looked at the empty chair across from me, the chair where my best friend of 14 years had just been sitting. The waiter came over nervously and asked if everything was okay. Check, please, I said. Let me tell you how it ended. Because every story like this has an ending, and the ending is never as clean as you want it to be. Ryan Calloway pled guilty 8 months later to wire fraud and theft of trade secrets. He received 11 years in federal prison. Apex Digital Solutions was dissolved. Every client he had stolen was notified. Most of them came back to Vaultline. Derek Haynes, my lead engineer who had been feeding Ryan technical support, pled guilty to trade secret theft. He received 3 years of probation and a lifetime ban from working in cybersecurity. He lost his career. He lost the equity stake in Vaultline. He had worked 3 years to earn. He sent me a letter 3 months later saying he was sorry. I didn't respond. The offshore account was harder. Cayman Island account recovery is slow and expensive. In the end, I recovered $612,000 of the $800,000. The rest was gone, consumed in shell account fees, legal costs, and the simple reality that financial crime doesn't always leave a full refund. And Lauren, I know that's what you've been waiting for. I know that's the part of the story that cuts the deepest. Lauren cooperated with the FBI in exchange for a reduced charge. She pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy. She received 2 years of probation and was ordered to repay her share of the stolen funds, no prison time. Some people close to me were angry about that. They thought she should have faced more. I understand that anger. But here's what I learned through this whole ordeal. Revenge that you have to carry with you forever eventually becomes heavier than the wound. I filed for divorce the day after her arrest. It was final 7 months later. The morning the divorce decree came through, I drove to the building where Vault Line's office was. I sat in the parking lot and looked at it for a long time. We had 43 employees who had nothing to do with any of this. People who showed up every day and did their jobs. People with mortgages and kids and ambitions that had nothing to do with Ryan's greed or my marriage falling apart. I walked in. I called a company-wide meeting. I stood at the front of the conference room and I told them the truth. All of it. I told them the company had been compromised, that the threat had been eliminated, and that we were still here. Someone in the back row started clapping. Then everyone did. I won't pretend it felt triumphant. It felt exhausted. It felt relieved. It felt like the first real breath after a very long time underwater. Here's what I want to leave you with. I'm 33 years old. I lost my best friend. I lost my marriage. I lost 14 months of my life to a war I didn't start. But I did not lose myself. And that in the end is the only scoreboard that matters. The people who betrayed me made the same calculation that every betrayer makes. They looked at the person who trusted them and they saw weakness. They saw a blind spot they could exploit. They mistook loyalty for stupidity. What they didn't understand is that the most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest one. It's the quiet one who watches, who waits, who builds a case in silence while you're busy celebrating a victory that was never yours. Ryan Calloway took 14 years of friendship and turned it into a federal indictment. Lauren took 3 years of marriage and turned it into evidence. And I took everything they tried to destroy and turned it into the strongest version of Vault Line that has ever existed. If you're going through something like this right now, a partner who's taking advantage, a person in your life who is taking more than they're giving, someone you trust who is not who they claim to be, I want you to hear me. You're not naive for having trusted them. You're not weak for having loved them. But you owe it to yourself to see them clearly. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember, the truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be found. Thank you for listening to my story. If this hit close to home, drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done differently. Tell me if you've been through something similar. This community is built on people who survived the worst that was done to them. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be back next week with another story you won't be able to turn off. Until then, protect your circle and know who's really in it.